Imagine waking up tomorrow, and your grocery store shelves are half empty. No imported coffee, no electronics, no auto parts, no affordable clothing. Gas prices spike overnight. The stock market tumbles. Amazon deliveries stall. And suddenly, the most complex economic machine in human history begins to seize. This isn't a dystopian movie script. It's a fragile system you depend on every single day. Because nearly everything in your life, your phone, your medicine, your furniture, travels by sea. Around 90% of global trade moves on container ships. That's not a typo. 9. 0. We don't think about it. We don't see it. But it's there moving silently across oceans. And right now, it's facing a crisis that could unravel global commerce. Welcome to the history behind money, the system that made the modern world. Let's rewind. In 1956, a trucking entrepreneur named Malcolm McLean had a simple but revolutionary idea. What if cargo could be packed into standardized steel boxes and transferred seamlessly between ships, trains, and trucks? That idea, containerization, reduced shipping costs by more than 90%. It didn't just make shipping cheaper. It made globalization possible. Factories moved overseas. Labor shifted to Asia. Supply chains stretched across continents. Corporations optimized everything for efficiency. Just-in-time manufacturing became the gold standard, and Americans benefited. Cheap goods, higher corporate profits, rising stock markets. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Efficiency is the enemy of resilience. The more optimized a system becomes, the less margin it has for disruption. And global shipping? It's optimized to perfection, which means it's brittle. The hidden geography of power. Global shipping doesn't move freely across open oceans like you might imagine. It funnels through narrow maritime corridors called chokepoints. These are the arteries of global trade. Block one and the world economy feels it. There are a handful that matter more than the rest. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20% of global oil consumption. The Suez Canal connects Europe and Asia. About 12% of global trade passes through it. The Panama Canal links the Atlantic and Pacific, critical for U.S. trade. The Strait of Malacca carries nearly a third of global maritime trade. And then there's the Bab el-Mandeb, connecting the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean, another vital oil artery. Now here's the chilling part. Every single one of these choke points is under stress. Geopolitical tension, military conflict, piracy, drought, infrastructure decay. You don't need all of them to fail. You just need one. Remember the Ever Given? March 2021. A single container ship, the Ever Given, runs aground in the Suez Canal. One ship. For 6 days, it blocked one of the most important trade arteries on Earth. More than 400 vessels were stuck. Billions of dollars in goods were delayed. The global economy lost an estimated $9 to $10 billion per day, all from one accident. If one ship can cause that kind of damage, what happens when multiple choke points are compromised at once? And that's not a hypothetical anymore. The US is not immune. You might be thinking, well, that's Europe. That's Asia. That's someone else's problem. It's not. The United States imports critical components for everything from pharmaceuticals to semiconductors. Many of those goods transit through the Panama Canal. And in 2023 and 2024, severe drought drastically reduced water levels in the canal's reservoirs. The Panama Canal Authority was forced to limit daily ship transits. Fewer ships, longer wait times, higher costs. Now imagine this scenario layered on top of geopolitical conflict in the Middle East, tensions in the South China Sea, and renewed instability around the Suez. We're not looking at a single event. We're looking at a convergence. And convergence is what breaks systems. How many days' worth of food do you think your local grocery store keeps in inventory? A month? 2 weeks? Try 3 to 5 days. That's it. The entire modern economy runs on timing. When timing breaks, everything breaks. Markets look calm until they don't. Shipping rates stay stable until they triple. Oil prices hover until a missile hits the wrong tanker. The fragility is hidden because the system has worked for decades. But history tells us something important. Every empire has believed its trade networks were permanent. They weren't, and that brings us to Act 2, because what's happening right now isn't random. It's structural, and the fault lines are widening. Let's talk about energy, because without oil, global shipping stops. Nearly all container ships run on bunker fuel, a heavy petroleum product. Now consider this. Roughly 1/5 of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. If conflict in the Persian Gulf intensifies, even briefly, oil prices could spike overnight. And oil doesn't just affect gasoline. It affects shipping costs. It affects fertilizer. It affects plastics. It affects everything. In 1973, the oil embargo triggered a global recession. Now imagine that kind of shock layered onto today's highly leveraged, debt-saturated global economy. The Red Sea escalation, recent instability near the Bab el-Mandeb has already forced major shipping companies to reroute vessels around Africa. That adds thousands of miles. Weeks of delay, higher insurance premiums, higher fuel costs, which means higher consumer prices. Inflation doesn't just come from stimulus checks. It can come from shipping lanes. And here's the kicker. When ships reroute around the Cape of Good Hope, it ties up global container capacity. Fewer ships available, higher freight rates, and guess who pays? Consumers, businesses, investors, you. The Taiwan flashpoint. Let's escalate further. The Taiwan Strait isn't technically a narrow canal, but it's one of the most strategically sensitive maritime corridors in the world. A significant percentage of global semiconductors come from Taiwan, and advanced chips power everything from your smartphone to military systems. If tension between China and Taiwan disrupts shipping in that region, even without a full-scale invasion, insurance markets could freeze. Shipping companies could pull back. Supply chains would cease. The stock market would not take that well, and neither would your retirement account. Climate, the silent disruptor. Here's something we don't talk about enough. Climate volatility is now a shipping risk. The Panama Canal depends on fresh water from rainfall. Less rain means fewer transits. The Suez Canal depends on stability in surrounding regions. The Arctic, once frozen, is opening new routes, but also new geopolitical competition. Storm intensity is increasing. Ports are vulnerable to sea level rise. Climate isn't a future issue. It's a logistics issue today. Imagine explaining to someone in 1995 that a drought in Panama could raise the price of cereal in Ohio. They'd laugh. Yet here we are. Here's where it gets serious. Shipping isn't just about goods, it's about finance. Global trade is funded through letters of credit, trade insurance, and complex financial instruments. If major shipping routes are disrupted for prolonged periods, financial institutions face exposure. Defaults rise. Liquidity tightens. Credit spreads widen. In 2008, financial contagion spread through mortgage-backed securities. In the next crisis, contagion could spread through trade finance. Because everything is connected. Always. For 30 years, the world moved toward integration. Now it's fragmenting. The US and China are decoupling in critical sectors. Supply chains are being reshored or friendshored. This sounds positive for resilience, and long-term it might be. But transitions are chaotic. New factories take years to build. Infrastructure takes billions to fund. In the meantime, we're stuck with a fragile network that everyone is quietly preparing to abandon. That's not stability. That's tension. The insurance warning. Insurance markets are often the first to signal real risk. When insurers raise premiums dramatically in a region, it means they see something coming. War risk premiums in key maritime corridors have spiked in recent years. That's not speculation. That's pricing risk in real time. When insurers blink, shipping companies reroute. When shipping companies reroute, costs explode. When costs explode, inflation returns, and central banks face a nightmare. Raise rates and crush growth? Or tolerate inflation and risk currency weakness? Either path is volatile. But here is the question no one is asking loudly enough. What happens if two choke points fail simultaneously? Not one, two. Hold that thought, because the final act is about consequences and what it means for you. The Strait of Hormuz faces military escalation. Oil prices spiked to $150 per barrel. At the same time, instability in the Red Sea forces ships to reroute around Africa. Shipping capacity tightens. Freight rates triple. Inflation surges again just as the Federal Reserve thought it had things under control. The stock market corrects sharply. Bond markets sell off. Consumer confidence collapses. Now layer in a drought that restricts Panama Canal traffic further. U.S. import delays worsen. Retail inventories fall. Companies miss earnings. Layoffs begin. This isn't fantasy. It's a stress test, and under stress the system cracks. Here's the paradox. Every major power depends on global trade. But every major power is also preparing for conflict. Military buildup in maritime corridors increases the risk of miscalculation, and miscalculation is how world events spiral. History is filled with examples of trade routes becoming flashpoints. The difference today? The scale. Global GDP is over $100 trillion. A severe maritime disruption wouldn't just be a regional crisis. It would be systemic. So is collapse inevitable? Not necessarily. Systems adapt. Shipping companies diversify routes. Nations build strategic reserves. Supply chains rebalance. But adaptation takes time. And markets move faster than infrastructure. The danger zone is the transition. That's where volatility lives. That's where fortunes are made and lost. If you're still watching, congratulations. You now know more about global shipping than most dinner party conversations will ever require. But this isn't trivia. This is your 401k. Markets are driven by perception as much as reality. If investors believe shipping lanes are unstable, they price that risk in. Risk premiums rise. Capital becomes more expensive. Growth slows. Even without a full collapse, fear can create contraction. And fear spreads faster than ships. Remember that question from earlier? What happens if two choke points fail at once? The answer isn't just higher prices. It's trust. Trust in global systems. Trust in stability. Trust in the assumption that tomorrow will look like yesterday. When trust erodes, behavior changes. Companies hoard inventory. Consumers panic buy. Nations impose export controls. That's how localized disruption becomes global crisis. Not through a single explosion, but through cascading reactions. Global shipping is the circulatory system of modern civilization. Choke points are its arteries. And right now, those arteries are narrowing. Geopolitical tension, climate volatility, energy dependence, financial fragility, individually manageable, together potentially explosive. This isn't about fear. It's about awareness. Because the next global crisis may not begin on Wall Street. It may begin in a narrow stretch of water thousands of miles away. And by the time markets react, it will already be too late to prepare. If you found this analysis valuable and want to understand how to position yourself financially in an era of rising geopolitical risk and supply chain volatility, watch the next video on your screen right now. In that video, we break down how investors can navigate global instability, protect purchasing power, and identify opportunities hidden inside economic chaos. Click the end screen, because understanding the choke point crisis is step 1. Positioning yourself before the next disruption? That's step 2. I'll see you there.